Now on the program today, we turn the spotlight on Nigeria's worsening security crisis and President Bola Tinubu's firm declaration: state police is no longer optional, but inevitable. From Boko Haram's endless assaults in the northeast to the rising banditry in Katsina and the devastated communities of Benue, now insecurity is tearing through the nation. But will state police be the game changer or another political tool? We'll break it down. This is Standpoint. I am Precious Amayu. Now, President Bola Tinubu says Nigeria has reached a turning point. Speaking at the presidential villa during a visit by Katsina leaders, the president insisted that creating state police is unavoidable if the nation is to confront its deepening insecurity. His comments come as northern elders demand a state of emergency in the region following relentless killings, abductions, and displacement. In Benue, TIV leaders lament that communities like Yewata remain in ruins months after a deadly herdsman attack claimed over 200 lives. While Afenifere and the Middle Belt Forum welcomed Tinubu's declaration as overdue and a step in the right direction, critics like retired General Ijeoma Nwonkoro warn it will hand governors their own armies of thugs. Senator Alindume, meanwhile, cautions against religious profiling, stressing that Boko Haram targets Muslims and Christians alike. And Defense Minister Mohammed Badaru links long-term security to good governance, poverty reduction, and regional cooperation. But for many Nigerians, the key question remains: will state police truly secure lives and property, or merely deepen political control? Today, we examine the stakes and possible outcomes of this pivotal shift in Nigeria's security architecture. Now, joining me on the conversation today are distinguished voices on security and governance. From our Abuja studio, we have Joel Kemie, a doctoral researcher and political analyst. He will be bringing an academic and analytical perspective to the debate. Now, also with us, we have via Zoom is Okechukwu Nwanguma, the Executive Director of the Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center. He will provide insights on human rights, law enforcement, and accountability in the security sector. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let me start with you, Mr. Nwanguma. I mean, I want to take a comment from the president, which is something that we rarely see him do. The president rarely would blame previous administration for the challenges that this administration is facing. He sets things close to that when it comes to the economy. But just for security, I just want to take a part of that comment and I get your reaction to it. The president said, I'm trying to find that so I can quote him accurately. He said, okay, we inherited weaknesses that could have been addressed earlier. It is a challenge that we must fix and we are facing it. But I want to, just the first line of that, that statement. We inherited challenges that could have been fixed earlier. I want to get your comment on that.
Well, when people are elected into office, they are elected to address problems, whether inherited problems or new challenges at the steps that the government is taking to address those challenges and not to be giving excuses about whether the challenges were inherited or not. What measures are in place to address those challenges? I think that is what matters.
But is it also, would it also be true that perhaps because of the lack of will, as it were, as people have always said, to address these challenges earlier on, it has made it so complicated and difficult to address, and perhaps that's the situation we're facing now?
Okay, when it comes to insecurity, there is no doubt that, in fact, the government, rather than take measures to improve these security challenges, those challenges worsened. And then this government came in and we are seeing further, for the
All right, we seem to be having challenge there with Mr. Wanguma's network, but let's turn to Abuja. Dr. Kemi, I was asking just the same question I asked Mr. Wanguma about whether if we had fixed some of these challenges earlier, maybe it wouldn't have been this complicated, or does that even matter at all?
Well, for me, I don't think like what your guest there was trying to talk about. The fact remains that government is a continuity. And we all saw before, during the elections, that the current administration said they were going to continue on the legacy. So for me, if they say they're going to continue on the legacies of the previous administration, it simply means they have an idea of what the problem has been all this while. Or except they are just trying to shortchange Nigerians with the truth. Otherwise, if the government says during campaign that we're going to continue on the legacy, it simply means they are aware of the situation. So what we expect, and since the current government said they will hit the ground running, so what we expect is not to make excuses, not to talk about what they met on ground, because government is a continuity. And considering the fact that this present government said they were going to continue on what the gains made by the previous administrations, that means they had an idea of what to expect. So what I expect is bringing a new dimension to the problem. If they know that, okay, this is already what we have insecurity as one of the biggest challenges of the country, what I expect that, okay, since the previous administration did 8 years and they probably used this approach or used this style in combating the problem, and the problem still continues or is even getting worse. So what I expect is to bring a new dimension, a new idea, in solving the problem, because considering that this problem is already there. So I don't think there's any need to give excuses that the previous administration did not do what they were supposed to do, because it's still the same party, and it's still, it's believed that they are continuing on what they met on ground. So at this point, I don't think there's any need to apportion blame or to, try to accuse the previous administration. When Obasanjo came in 1999, the system was already rotten. But what did he do? He hit the ground running, trying to repair Nigeria's image, went around doing everything to reposition Nigeria, to where is expected, where the people want the country to be. So what I expect from this administration is not just to blame, it's to hit the ground running, like they said, bring new dimensions to this problem. And because the issue, prosperity of a country, economy, and what have you, is tied around, security. It's tied around, peaceful coexistence, because even businesses will thrive when you have, good security in place. So, and since this current government is so ambitious that they're going to make billions and trillions of economy and all of that, I think the issue of insecurity should be faced head on, not making excuses.
All right, so let's talk about the security architecture and structure as we have it today, because there is a clamor for state police. It's been there, even the 2014 confab also recommended the creation of state police. But in terms of what we have now, the security architecture and structure, what exactly, just a minute, Dr. Joel.
Really, Dr.
Wanguma, just a minute. Let me land on the question. I was going to ask you what exactly is wrong with the structure. What's the challenge with the structure we have today?
You see, one of the basic things about life is change. So if you have adopted a particular system for over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, and you're not getting the desired result, change becomes inevitable. So the clamor for state police has been on the front burner for a very long time, even before insecurity got to this level that we see today. And the politicians, the leaders, or those at the helms of affairs, the creators of power, they've always played politics with the state police thing. And because if you talk about state police, it comes with other things that have to do with federalism and a whole lot of that. So some people do not want this to work, but yet they want security. And since this is now coming from the president himself, I'm sure he has information that we do not have. I'm sure he must have gotten the best of the advice to say, one of the best ways to solve this issue is to have state police. Now, recently, a few days ago, the governor of Zamfara State, Mr. Dauda, talked about the fact that because the Northwest, they are one of the worst hit of the banditry. And then the governor said, we know where they are, just that we cannot go in there because you know, of course, we understand how the current police structure is, based on Section 214 and Section 215 of the Nigerian Constitution, where we only have one police, one central police that is controlled by the president based on Section 215 of the Constitution. So he said, we know where it is, where these people are, but we cannot take any action because these governors, they are just chief security officers just on paper. But in terms of dishing out orders and carrying out strategic security measures, it rests squarely on the shoulders of the president. So if the president has said we need to have state police, I think this is coming at the right time. I know a lot of people have expressed fears, they've expressed some sort of pessimism with the whole thing. But this is law. And amending the Section 214, amending the Section 215, we'll still have subsections that will allay the fears of the people. You know, the constitutional process, the process of amending the Constitution goes with, collecting public hearings and all of that. I'm sure those charged with responsibility of amending the relevant sections of the Constitution will take all these fears into recognition, and then subsections will be enacted, or that section will be amended, subsection will be included to allay the fears of these people. So I don't think there's anything to worry about when you say governors will use state police. That means there will be certain laws that will limit to the extent to which a governor can act with the state police. But what people are not even looking at are some of the other issues that goes with state police. When it comes to, do some states even have the financial wherewithal to pay the police? Do they have the financial wherewithal to get the modern policing equipment? Do they have the wherewithal to have the kind of manpower that modern policing requires? These are some of the questions we should be asking, because if you talk about a governor using the police as a tool of oppression against opposition, I think there are enabling laws within the system that will, put check to those excesses. So I think we should be more concerned about how do we go about, getting the manpower that, because whether you like it or not, the states in Nigeria are not equal in terms of financial resources. So if you're talking about state police in entirety, how do some of these states who are still struggling to even pay salaries, who are even struggling to maintain a good civil service, struggling to maintain infrastructure, how can they even, recruit people, give them modern police training and all of that? And people are not even thinking about or talking about the fact that there are some states where you have majority of some ethnic groups. People are not even talking about, there might be some sort of lopsidedness when it comes to
there are a lot of issues you have raised, Dr. Joel, and this is why perhaps some people would say, because there have been two approaches to this. Some people say, oh, let's just start and continue to refine as we go. For others is let's get all of these issues right so that we do not have to come back to the foundation. Should we rush this, or should we take our time to address all of these issues you've raised, especially in terms of ethnicity? There's also the religious. I think it was I can't remember which of the governors who said let's not make this a religious. Senator Ali Ndube, who said let's not make this a religious challenge. Boko Haram attacks both Christians and Muslims. And so these are some of the issues that should be addressed. And I'm wondering, should we not take a time, to deal with this, or should we just act on emergency and the urgency of the moment?
You see, I don't think we need to take our time. The members of the parliament, or those charged with the responsibility of amending the constitution to ensure that we have state police, I think they can work overnight. They can work overtime to ensure this is done. Because whether you like it or not, every day, there's no day you wake up in this country that you do not hear that scores of people have been killed in one area or the other. If it's not in the southeast, it's in the northwest, it's in the northeast, even in the north central. I read something this morning about a terrorist group operating in Kwara, and lots of people have been killed. So I think the government needs to take this issue head on, to be very, very serious about it. So, just like what we've had with the elections in the past, from 1999 to today, it can only get better, okay? We have to put these things in operation to ensure that as soon as possible, we have these things, we have certain deadlines to ensure that, yes, we meet this problem. In the meantime, government, we need to ensure that the number of people that are killed every day by these terrorists or bandits or whatever they are called is reduced to the barest minimum. So since the president himself has mentioned it, I think all these issues that I just mentioned about how to recruit, how to get equipment, how to get modern police training, how to get this, how to get that, I think these things should be part of the work in progress. Because whether you like it or not, this is a government that is seriously talking about foreign direct investment. And how can foreign direct investment thrive in a society where insecurity is the norm, where insecurity is on this high level, where insecurity has become the order of the day? So I think the government, as part of its approach in combating insecurity, since it has now identified that state police is one way to go in addressing this issue, I think the government needs to ensure, call the governors together, and then amend the relevant sections of the Constitution, Section 214, Section 215, to ensure that the states can operate the state police. And then the fears expressed by people, like I said in my previous submission, will be, something that will be curtailed as we progress, because the sanctity of life should be protected as much as possible. So, like, I totally agree with you. It's something we have to start. And then all these issues, all the fears, expressed by the diversity of Nigerians, all of this will be, aggregated, and then the government will see to it that these fears are allayed as much as possible. Right. So I think the state police thing is one way to go.
I understand we have Mr. Wanguma back now. Let's bring him in. I'm sure you've been listening to some of the points that Dr. Joel raised, Mr. Wanguma. One of them has to do with funding, another structure, and then he also talked about just the fears that some Nigerians have about this becoming a tool of oppression in the hands of some governors. But I want to start with in terms of structure. And how do you what sort of structure do you think that this should take? Because most times what we do is to just, copy from somewhere and paste right in Nigeria, and then we just adopt without domesticating. But what sort of structure do you think it should take as we progress in the conversation?
Okay, so let me start by making the point that the cause of insecurity, the police is not the cause of insecurity. Police only responds to insecurity. It responds to the symptoms of insecurity. Insecurity is caused by economic and political dysfunctions in the state. Talking about unemployment, poverty, inequality, exclusion, and of course abuse of power. Unless these are addressed, unless these factors that drive insecurity are addressed, dwelling on police, whether it is state police or federal police, will be scratching the surface. Now, the effectiveness of the police does not depend on whether a police is state police or federal police, whether it is owned by the state or owned by the federal government. After all, America has a centralized policing system. Yet, the American police still grapples with corruption, ineffectiveness, racism, and brutality. Other countries like Denmark and Ireland have centralized policing, but they do better in terms of human rights violations. So you see, it does not really depend on whether it is state-owned or federal-owned. It's a question of how do you address the risk factors that creates insecurity. Because as long as those factors remain, the police can do no more. But if you check that since Nigeria returned to democracy, there have been several presidential committees on police reform that recommended different measures to address challenges from training, funding, doctrine, promotion, welfare. And, these recommendations have not been effectively, these reforms have not been, implemented. So rather than address issues of ownership, I think we should deal with these structural issues, address issues of accountability, oversight, Unless these reforms are effected, creating state police will be like, transferring one problem at the federal, at the center into 36 other states. Look at the incident that happened in Anambra recently, where the state-controlled security outfit, brutalized a youth corps member, a female youth corps member. This is the experience of Nigerians across the country where similar state-controlled outfits exist. And they give us an insight into what state police, without checks, without, oversight, will do. So I think that the problem is not whether it is state police. There's need to address why is the police as it is, the federal police as it is, why is it unable to effectively discharge its functions unless we address those challenges and make them effective. Replicating, multiplying, decentralizing police by creating state police would be like decentralizing those problems and multiplying them across the states. So we need to address the structural problems. And
I want to just state some of the things that the president said. One of the comments he made was to have a policing system that is indigenous to the community and create the additional safety buffer and effectiveness in that area. But the underlying word there is indigenous to the community. Isn't that also very important in addressing the security challenges?
Yeah, so you see, making police closer to the people, makes it easier for the police, because the truth is that the police cannot perform effectively without being close to the people and without having the confidence of the people, without community support and participation. And how do you do that? If creating state police does not achieve that goal, because when you create a state police, for example, like we have Agune Chamber in Anambra that did what it did recently, and of course this happens all over the place, without checks and balances, without control, without community support. So if we talk about decentralization, why don't we strengthen the federal police as it is? We have police in all the states. We have police in the states. We have police at the divisional levels. So why don't we strengthen the police at those levels with adequate training, funding, equipment, improve their morale, and then put in place oversight and accountability mechanism that will make sure that, when they go outside the law, that there are measures and structures and mechanisms in place to deal with those. So for me, what I'm saying is that, yes, decentralization is good, bringing police close to the communities is good, but how do we insulate them from political control, from corruption, from abuse? Creating state police, for me, without putting in place these structures of checks, we will not solve the problem. Of course, policing is local, I agree, but without community support, without community confidence, and what destroys confidence is when the police resort to this brutal and ruthless means of, and it's a function of many things: the way they are trained, their neglect, the fact that they are forced, they are denied funding, that they now have to depend on citizens, on people who bring complaints for money to do investigation. They depend on accused persons for money to do investigation. So that kind of police cannot earn the support of the people. So unless those reforms,
so let me allow
recommended.
Mr. Wanguma, apologies. Let me allow Dr. Joel, respond to you, because he had said that, look, we should not focus on some of these issues as the challenge to creating state policing. But Dr. Joel, you heard Mr. Wanguma raise some of these issues Nigerians are also talking about in terms of the excesses that might come out of this. He mentioned accurately what happened in Anambra State. Leading up to the election in Edo State, we saw also what happened until the IGP had to ban the activities of this state security outfit there in Edo State. And we also saw what happened, I think it's in Uromi, between people who were called, they were travelers moving from one state to the other, and then there was some sort of attack between them and the state vigilante, and we also saw what happened in that regard. And so these are some of the fears that people have, the excesses. And isn't that just, that's why I was saying, should we rush this, or should we take our time to ensure that we put in the checks and balances before it is created?
You see, I think people, still find it difficult to make a clear demarcation between vigilante groups and the actual police. The vigilante group has no, definition in law. The need for the state police is why the states have even instituted vigilante groups in the first place as a sort of self-help to manage this lingering security crisis in their domains. Because the federal police cannot do all at this point. Because whether you like it or not, I think right now we have close to 350 or 400,000. And quite a significant number of the police we have, they are attached to VIPs. And over time, we have laws, the Police Act, the Police Service Commission, the Ministry of Police Affairs, that regulates the activities of police officers, that regulates their activities and see to the welfare, promotion, discipline, and what have you of police officers. I think we already have those. Just that we had probably not implementing them to the fullest. Now, the states that have vigilante, why did they have vigilante in the first place? It's because of the insecurity. And because the Constitution only, the Section 214 and Section 215 only provides for federal police. So as a means of substituting or trying to manage the local level of security, some of these states have instituted vigilante. Sometimes we have to look at what gains have the vigilante made. Yes, we know that some of them, they've exercised sort of brutal powers, on the downtrodden, and they've tried to brutalize people, especially with the issue of the Anambra and all of that. But look at some of the gains that have been made over the years by different vigilante groups in different parts of Nigeria. But Dr. Joel,
first of all, I want to come in, Dr. Joel.
We should use that as a way. And
Dr. Joel, just a minute, because you mentioned that
that's why we need the state police in Nigeria.
Just a minute, Dr. Joel. The question is still for you. You mentioned it is not about vigilante. It is about policing. Is it really about the nomenclature? Because whether you say state police or vigilante, I'm sure that some of these people who are in the vigilante will be absorbed into the state police system. And then how many of these vigilantes really have been effective? I mean, you can only point to one success story if you look at all of them. Maybe Ondo State with the Amotekun. But most of them are not as effective as we have it in Ondo State.
Yes, that's the reason why the police, the state police is important at this time. So what we need to do, we need to abolish all of these vigilantes because they have no place in the law. So we need to start up, you need to amend the constitution, include the state police in the constitution, have relevant sections that will guide their activities, and then definitely we can always, from the countries where we borrow this democracy from, we can always borrow this state police. Take a lead from what they have been doing. How successful has it been over the years? We can borrow some of these things and put them. Mind you, why state police is quite very, very important is the fact that we have so many ungoverned spaces in Nigeria. And that these ungoverned spaces has given room for all sorts of criminality, banditry, and the rest of their extremism to thrive. So if you have people from the local areas, from the state police, man these areas, we're not saying the insecurity will just go away 100%, but it will help to curtail. And then the law, the constitution, or what have you that regulates these activities will make it very clear the extent to which a state police can act before the federal police will come into place. And your guest there talked about the symptoms that the police deals with. Yes, we understand these are the symptoms. In societies where there's inequality and the rest of them, there's bound to be insecurity. And just today I was talking to someone, I said, in a society where you have too many young people who are not gainfully employed, it's more like a time bomb. So if we have state police and some of these people who know the nook and crannies of these ungoverned spaces, they are recruited into the system and they take their oath of office and they understand the responsibility they are being charged with. Definitely this will go a long way in helping us to solve this insecurity. And right from time, I've not been an advocate of the vigilante group because some of them are street urchins who have been recruited into this process. But whether you like it or not, they have made some games. We remember at one time when the Southeast was a hotbed of armed robbery and the rest of them. How were the governments of the Anambra and the rest of them able to manage it? It's through some of this vigilante group. But what we are saying is the vigilante group has no process in law, has no definition in law. What we need to do, having the state police, means their activities or what have you will be guided by the principles of the Constitution, which is the grand norm. So if we have that at the state level, and mind you, setting up this issue of state police, I know it's not something, it's not a walk in the park. It's something that will take, it's a painstaking process that will review the policies and all of them like that. So I believe those who will now be charged with the responsibility and in ensuring that the state police function effectively.
All right, thanks for staying with us, everyone. You're watching Standpoint, and today we're discussing the call for state policing, and the president recently made a statement saying, look, it is now of a necessity and he wants it done as soon as possible. That's what we've been looking at. And how urgent should we have it, especially with the security challenges? I've been speaking with Dr. Joel Keme and Mr. Wanguma, who has been perhaps on different sides, seeing things from different lenses. Thank you both for staying with us. So, Mr. Wanguma, yes, let me come to you. I'm just listening to what Dr. Joel said there. I mean, you've also listened to the governors, especially the northern governors. And one of them said recently that, look, give me state policing and I will end insecurity in my state in 2 months. It shows you that they perhaps have done their own investigation and realized that the only way to address the challenges in their states is through state policing that is recognized, that can carry arms. Because what we have today is the vigilantes that really cannot bear arms. Compared to what we have heard and has been reported, that these bandits and terrorists, wield around. And so isn't that also important, to at least sort of consider in that conversation? Well,
let me start by saying that the reason state governments are setting up
All right, again, challenges with Mr. Wanguma's network. Let's get back to Dr. Joel. Dr. Joel, you were talking about structure, and I'm wondering what structure should this take, which is a big conversation around this, especially if you want to have a unified standard. We see what's happening with SIEC. SIEC for a lot of people is a wake-up call when state governors organize local government elections, and we see how it turns out. And people are wondering if these governors who are organizing these elections and it's turning out this way, where it is all, the leading party in the state or the ruling party in the state is the one that claims either all of the seats in the local government. So, I mean, how do you expect it to be when you then have state policing?
You see, the issue of local government, we all know it is political because they believe that who controls the local government controls the entire state, especially when it comes to election and controlling the wards during election. We all know that. So that's why the state governors are very, very particular when it comes to that. And it's very unfortunate that when local government elections are held, the incumbent government or the government in power wins all of the state. And then we've seen footages on social media on how some of these elections are conducted. It's very, very unfortunate that Nigerian democracy has not attained that level where we can just sit back and say, okay, there are enough credibility with elections, especially with local government elections. Now, this is security. I think in this case, it is very, 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 very different. The structure of the police force will be determined by relevant laws, maybe the Constitution, just like the Constitution has declared in Section 214 and Section 215 about how the policing will be. And I think if the sections of the Constitution is amended and then we add relevant subsections in the Constitution that will clearly define the structure of how the state police would be, I think that will help to have a uniform system of state police across the federation. That way you will not see a different style of police structure in one state and you see different from another state. And then based on the Constitution, this is my view now, I think, or I'm suggesting, there should be a section where all states, just like you have with the state electoral commissions, will have special kind of report to the Police Service Commission. It still controls, in terms of structure, in terms of borrowing on how to, what are the rules of engagement, what are the ways of recruitment, what should be trainable when it comes to training and retraining and the kind of arms that the states should control. All of this will be determined by law. So that is why this is different from elections. Election is a struggle for power. But in this case, it's trying to secure the lives and properties of people. And mind you, that is the primary essence of government. That is security and welfare of the people shall be the primary. So the primary essence of government is security. So if the government, this is not election now, this is security of lives and property. And how the state government will, help to stimulate economic activity will be dependent on how they manage security. So for me, I think some of these fears is because we do not have relevant sections here that deals with some of these. So by the time we have all of these, trust me, we'll have a uniform structure. And this is not even rocket science. All we need to do is just take a cue from countries who have done this state policing for several years, and it has worked. There are so many experts in Nigeria who have written countless and countless of articles, books on, modern policing. All we need to do, get these people together with the people who make these laws, and then we'll draft these things, and then these things will be in play. And trust me, I can assure you, the issue that has to do with, like the other of your guests mentioned, that has to do with funding the police and all of that. What you will see in your state will be a function of how the governor treats it. That's what it should be. So if you see a good security state police functioning well in Lagos, and you don't see it functioning well in Kebbi, or you don't see it functioning well in Edo, it simply means the governor will be held accountable, because based on the enabling laws that fashions out or makes out way of how to fund and refund and do whatever it is to ensure that the state police succeed. If it's not succeeding, then the governor of the state will be held responsible. So this is what I'm trying to talk about. So we need to do this state policing. I think it is long overdue. But before we embark on the state policing in its entirety, amending relevant sections of constitution or amending relevant laws to get these things up and running, I think we need to collect, views of Nigerians expressed in different forms. All of this will now form the basis on how these policies and these sections
and that in itself is a very long process. But let me get in Mr. Wanguma back into the conversation. Mr. Wanguma, you were going to answer my question on the clamor for state police by the governors, and perhaps maybe they have seen how relevant it is to curbing the challenges as it has to do with security in their state.
Yes, I'm wondering why you're not hearing me clearly, because I don't know. But my point was that the reason state governments are creating vigilante groups, or the reason for the clamor for state police, is one thing. It is because of the ineffectiveness, the failure of the police, Nigerian police force as it is. And of course, whether you call it vigilante group, for example, the Anambra security outfit that I'm using as an example. If you don't call it state police, what will you call it? And usually, at the initial time when they are set up, they enjoy a lot of popularity. But over time, they descend into lawlessness, into weapons of lawlessness, and enjoying political cover. They become tools, whether it is Agunetemba in Anambra or Bubagu in Imo and Ebonyi State, or even in Benue. Across the country, we have similar outfits. The reason they are being set up is because of the gap, the failure of the police as it is. And I'm saying that the question should be, why is the police failing? Now, I talked about funding. If you talk about funding, how much does a divisional police command receive for its operations? When you don't fund them well, how do you expect them to operate? When you don't deal with professional training, even go to the police training colleges and see how they are. They cannot produce professional and committed police officers. How do you expect them to operate? Look at even the issue of recruitment. Each time the police and the Police Service Commission are fighting, we don't have enough manpower. So if you don't address all these challenges, and like I said, the police will only respond to crime, whether it is, decentralized police or centralized police. That does not answer to the question. And like I said, America is the best example of a centralized policing system. I said that before. Look at the level of crime in America, racism, ineffectiveness and all that. Look at other countries that have centralized policing. So it's not a question of whether it is state police or not. Unless, why is it that the reforms recommended by successive police reform committees from the time of President Obasanjo to the time of President Yar'Adua to the time of President Goodluck, Jonathan, each of these administrations have set up presidential committees, and they came up with very far-reaching recommendations. They are not being implemented, addressing all these problems that I have talked about. If you don't address them, what is the guarantee that setting up state police will make it? It's not a question of law. The problem is not a law. We have laws that are regulating the Nigerian police as it is. We have the Constitution, you have the Police Act, you have the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, you have the Anti-Torture Act. They all exist. But these are not being complied with. So the fundamental problem is not whether police is owned by the state or owned by the federal government. We need to address the structural problems that are bedeviling the police, and then address the root cause of insecurity. If you don't deal with the things causing insecurity, you put police under pressure, and yet they are not adequately funded, trained, and motivated to deal with crime and insecurity. So state police, for me, is begging the question. It is arming state government. It will be arming state governors with additional armament to attack political opponents, to repress the citizens. They already have the state houses of assembly in their pocket. They have the local governments in their pocket. They have the state judiciary in their pocket. Now you want to give them state police again? What
Mr. Wankuma, Dr. Joel recommended that, first of all, I know you have talked about the fact that we have all the laws and all the acts, and yet, we're still where we are. But he has talked about ensuring that the Constitution captures all of these challenges and addresses them in a way that the governors, almost as though their hands are tied. And he also mentioned that you could tie it back to the Police Service Commission, which would also almost be like a regulator like you have in the aviation sector, where the Ministry of Aviation continues to regulate. He also mentioned ensuring that Nigerians have a say in how this is structured. I mean, doesn't that sort of allay address your fears, rather?
How effective is the Police Service Commission with regards to, oversighting the police as it is? How effective is the National Human Rights Commission with regards to, monitoring and holding police abuse for human rights violations? How effective are they? How come that when the police breach the law, whether it's the Constitution or the Police Act, nothing happens? So, I mean, the problem, as far as I'm concerned, is not the law. The law is important, yes, but if there is no political will to enforce the law, to put in place institutions that are independent and effective, that can ensure that these laws are complied with, and that there are consequences when police officers abuse their powers. Unless if we have not achieved that with the police as it is at the federal level, what is the guarantee that we will achieve it at the state level?
So, Dr. Joel, you talked about funding, and this is a big challenge. As we have today, we have a police force that still complains about its welfare. Almost, in fact, all of the states, maybe not all, maybe most of the states, a huge percentage of them still depend on federal allocation. Most of them are not even paying, as it were today, the minimum wage. When it was 30,000 naira, the NLC was really battling, with most of these states. Some of them still did not pay the 30,000 naira. And so, would that not also be a challenge? How do you find the money to fund the state police when, just the workforce within the state right now, there is a struggle?
You see, when I first made my submission, you remember I talked about people mentioned that state governors will use the police as a tool. People talked about, express their fears in different ways. And one of the things I said, that where people are not talking about is the fact that, okay, where will some of the governors get fundings? How will, because some states in Nigeria, whether they like it or not, they are poor. And how will some of these states raise monies to pay this police force? Will they meet the quota needed to manage this, to govern the entire state? Will they have the resources to ensure that a modern form of police training is guaranteed and all of that? These are some of the fears I expressed. But like I said, in drafting this policy or in coming about the issue related to state police, those charged with the responsibility must put all of these things into account. Otherwise, it might just be an exercise in futility. It might just be like, things we have on paper, and the political will to ensure that these things are implemented is not there. We know in Nigeria there are a lot of laws. There are a lot of laws and policies that will better the lives of Nigerians, and all of that. But the political will to implement them is not there, just like what your guest said. But like I said, in my position, given the level of insecurity we have in Nigeria now, I think right now, we need to go back to the drawing table. I understand the fact that he mentioned that some of the indices, some of the things that lead to insecurity in the country have not been addressed. Yes, that much I know. But we can address this issue. And I'm sure the president, who has more information or certain form of information that we do not have, must have gotten some of these things, this information for him to, to have resorted to or, backing state police. I'm sure he must have put all of these things into consideration. We know over the years there have been cries about funding of police force and everything related to that. But I think one of the ways we can get these things done is to start from there, to ensure that even the federal police has, enough funding and enough enabling environment to function. And then your guest talked about the fact that what's the difference between vigilante and police? The vigilante has no place in law. There's no law. There's no law in the Constitution that guarantees, the activities yes, we understand that. Yes, some governors have used this vigilante over the years as a tool. But when you have enabling environment, when you have laws that governs the activities of state police and all that, right, all of these things will not be in place.
Dr. Joel, I have a minute left.
Simply because hello?
Apologies, I have a minute left, and I want to give it to Mr. Wanguma because he's really not had enough time to speak on this issue. So I'll just give him the last 1 minute to make his final point, and then we will wrap. Mr. Wanguma.
Okay, so one other important thing we need to, take into consideration is the need to insulate the police from political control. All said and done,
Mr. Wanguma, your line is breaking.
As long as the political autonomy, in terms of even how political interference is one other inhibiting factor. Same way the president unduly controls the police is the same way the governors are going to also control the state police unless those necessary checks are put in place. And finally, and let me also make the point that state governors who have not been able to pay their workforce, how would they get the money to pay the police? Because the police will constitute an additional burden to the finances of the state. So we need to think, like he said, I agree with him, we need to deeply through this without just jumping in.
We have to leave it there. Really. Thank you so much for your time, doctoral researcher and political analyst, Joel Kemia. Thank you so much for your time. And then the Executive Director of the Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center, Mr. Okechukwu Wanguma. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
That's Standpoint this week. Remember, you can watch the repeat broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight and 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. Thanks for watching. I am Precious Amayu.